Hey y'all, it's Ashley Bookishrealm and I'm back with another video. So today I am here to talk a little bit about my mid-year, my check-in. I was gonna do the mid-year book freakout tag, but I decided just to go with talking about the best and worst books that I've read so far this year, since we are at the halfway point. We're a little bit over the halfway point, so I'm not going to be including any books that I've read so far this month, although July is turning out to be a really good reading month. I am just primarily going to focus on everything that I read from January to the end of June. And then, of course, when we get into the early parts of next year, we will go over the best and the worst books again. So everybody loves these videos, and people, really like seeing what people have read, what their best and worst reads have been. I just want to kind of give a little bit of an overview, talking a little bit about like how much I've read and is there anything in particular that I'm looking forward to. And so just doing a very, very consolidated version of the mid-year book freakout tag. But before we get started, as always, if you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more content, make sure you click the subscribe button. If you're looking for ways to support the channel, I do have all of that information via, Patreon and stuff down in the description box below. But all right, so diving into the information, what I've been reading, how I've been reading. So I know that I did a little bit of my mid-year goal check-in just the other day. It should have been like a couple of days ago that was posted, that I did my mid-year goal check-in. And I have read probably close to, I'm still not finished reviewing yet. I think I'm over 250 books for the year. So at the halfway mark, I'm a little over 250 for the year. I am close to my 50,000 page mark, which means that I am halfway through my 100,000 page goal. Keep in mind, remember, I am not looking for a number in terms of books. I just wanted to focus a little bit more on page count this year. And I've been having a pretty decent reading month. Reading year. I have been pretty much reading whatever I want. I am very, very proud of myself because I think this year is the year that I've been exploring more children's literature than I have in the past. I am infamous for reading middle grade. A lot of people know that I do read a good bit of middle grade, but I have been looking at some children's chapter book series that I've been really, really interested in, and I've been reading those and reviewing those, and so that's been making me happy. I've been reading graphic novels, comics, and manga to my heart's content. If you're interested in any of that content, I'm going to be doing a similar version of this over on that channel, talking about my best and my worst reads for the year so far. But it's been a good reading year. This is the year that I feel like I am getting the most pleasure out of reading, and it actually was difficult to do the worst books for the year so far, because I think that these are books that I've kind of talked about quite a bit, and I haven't really been reading a lot of duds. There's been a lot of 3-star reads here and there, but primarily a lot of my reading has skewed towards 3.5 and up, which is, I think, is good. That makes me feel great inside. It makes me feel really good. So what we're gonna do is, I always say, like, I like to end these videos on a positive note. So we're gonna jump in. I'm gonna be looking a little bit this way because I do have my list on that side of me, and we're going to start with the worst, and then we're going to finish out with the best picks. And so if you've watched a couple of my videos and those weekly wrap-ups, or if you've watched any of my videos where I've talked about my best and worst reads for the month, then some of these you may be familiar with, some of these you may not be familiar with, and I probably will be referencing a couple of videos that I've discussed these books in, so I will be sure to link all those videos up in the card symbol above. I'm hoping that this video is not too long because of the fact that a lot of these are books that I've discussed about or I've done previous videos for. So if you want more detail, in-depth videos or in-depth thoughts, I would definitely recommend checking out those videos. Okay, so first on the list for the worst books that I've read so far this year, Peter Pan. I ended up reading Peter Pan for my Is This Book Problematic series. I need to do another one. I'm actually thinking about doing The Secret Garden for the next pick because that's one that I haven't revisited in a very, very long time. Peter Pan is one that I had actually never read before, but had seen so many different movie adaptations of it, and I had heard some things about Peter Pan, and so I decided to pick it up. It's a well-beloved classic, and outside of just understanding that Peter Pan is a book of its time, I loathed Peter. Peter is a complete a-hole, and Peter is just not Peter was not my cup of tea. I didn't enjoy Peter. I didn't like him. I thought he was horrible to everyone. And I know that some of you have given me some great recommendations of like people who've kind of flipped the Peter Pan narrative on its head, and this idea that Peter Pan is actually not really the good guy. He's actually the villain, and Captain Hook is actually the good guy in all of this. But I just didn't enjoy Peter Pan at all. A lot of it had to do with Peter as a character. A lot of it had to do with the way that I felt as though, what is the girl's name in Peter Pan? Oh my gosh. I swear I got mommy brain and it just never ever went away. I wanted to call her Jane, but Jane is Wendy's daughter, Wendy. I didn't like the way Wendy was described in some parts. I felt like it was a little touch and go there. I didn't really care for that. So Peter Pan was just not, it was not a vibe for me this year. I did a full in-depth review of that one, so I'll make sure I link that in the card symbol above. The next one I have on my list is Corinne, which I have two ways that you can hear my thoughts about this. So Mara from Books Like Woe had reached out to me and several other people to read Corinne. If you don't know anything about Corinne, it's by Rebecca Morrow. However, the thing about it is that the name itself, Rebecca Morrow, is a pen name. And for the longest time, people were trying to figure out who it was because it's attached to a New York Times bestselling author. And so many people had different theories about who they thought Corinne, like who wrote Corinne, who Rebecca Morrow was. And so we read the book trying to figure out the mystery ourselves because it was this huge thing that was on TikTok at one point. I personally did not enjoy this book. We came to the conclusion that we do think it's Rainbow Rowell who wrote this book, and that we're pretty sure that it's Rainbow Rowell who wrote the book, and it adds up that she would be the one that wrote the book. I didn't like it. It is about a woman who has grown up in a very strict fundamentalist Christian household and has pretty much been excommunicated from the group after it was discovered that she had sex with Enoch, which if I never ever have to freaking hear the name Enoch again, I think I will be okay. But it was like reading a book by a person who had thought that they had deconstructed and really had a lot more to unpack. It was not very healthy, and I'm not sure what the intentions behind this book were. I know some people are like, they appreciated the representation, especially for those that have grown up in fundamentalist Christian households. But I think on a technical level for me, in terms of the writing and the story itself, I didn't enjoy it at all. It was a pain to get through. People were calling this book steamy and hot, and I was like, but where, sis? Because ain't nothing about this book steamy nor hot. All of the sex scenes in this book were very mechanical and dry. I read romance. I am not a part of romance booktube per se, but I read a good bit of romance. I dip my toes into it whenever I get the urge to read about, you know, other people smashing. Don't pay me any mind today. But this was not romantic. It did not make me feel all warm and fuzzy feelings in certain areas of myself. It was like, please, let's rush past this. This is embarrassing and it's very mechanical, and this is not enjoyable. This doesn't sound enjoyable for you. It's not enjoyable for me. And the relationship was a bubble. They had to function within the confines of the two of them. They couldn't have this open relationship outside of the two of them because he was still adamantly a part of the church, and she did not want to go back to that. She could not go back to that, but in essence she was still a part of that because she was still dealing with him. And it was just a very strange book for me. I did not enjoy it, regardless of what points Rainbow Rowell / Rebecca Morrow, whoever, was trying to make in this book. It just was not a well-written book for me. I did not like the voices behind it, the writing style, and nothing about it was entertaining to me. And so there's that. The next one that I ended up reading was for another group of apologize. So Bethany from Beautifully Bookish Bethany had asked if we could, you know, a group of us, once again, be a part of a kind of, I don't want to say a reading challenge, but a reading project that she's conducting. It's a book club. And, you know, when Bethany comes up with these book clubs, she comes knocking, I come answering, because it's always a good time. It's always fun discussions, fun selections. And this one is focusing on classic lesbian romances. And I was like, girl, sign me up. Show me the dotted line so I could sign my name. Very excited. Still very, very excited about it. I'm actually hosting the second live show that we'll be doing in August. So be on the lookout for that. The first one that we ended up reading was Patience and Sarah, which is, I believe, categorized as one of the first lesbian romances. I'm going to link the live show discussion up in the card symbol above. It was a fun live show discussion. Like I said, always a good time. Patience and Sarah has its place in the history of literature. In the context of everything, I think it's phenomenal that this book was published when it was published, which I believe was in the 60s. Don't ask me the year because I can't remember the year. But it's amazing that it was published when it was published and the content that is in the book. That is extremely fascinating because I wouldn't think that something as open as this book, as sexually open as well, and not, I mean, we're not talking about like the romance books that we read now, but still, if you read the book, you'll understand where I'm coming from, where there's a level of sexual openness about this book that I would not think would be published at a time that this book was published. With that being said, I did not like this book. I did not like Patience and Sarah at all. It was not it, okay? I enjoyed Sarah as a character. I liked her personality. I thought that she was just a very sweet and caring soul. Patience was a piece of work, okay? So Patience basically wanted Sarah to be the type of woman that she felt comfortable having a romantic relationship with, meaning that she only wanted her to look a certain way. She wanted her to be femme. And it was it was horrible because Sarah often comes off in my mind through descriptions as more androgynous. She passes for a guy for a good portion of the book, and that's how her father has raised her. And Patience did not like that. And I felt like this would have been, I think Bethany had made the comment too during the live show, this would have been more interesting if Sarah was NB, but we're not, that's not what we were getting. And so we see Patience force Sarah into situations like having to wear a dress, which clearly I think is uncomfortable for Sarah at some points. I think that Patience is absolutely rude to her when they do have sex. Patience is horrible to her. She's like, I don't want to have sex with you because you're too loud. Like, and doesn't really go about it in a very nice way to let her know, like, hey, you're kind of loud when we have sex, but like, so what? And it's just, everything had to be on Patience's terms. It was just, she was just not a likable character, and I just didn't like the way that she treated Sarah, and I felt like Sarah was a convenient woman for her to be with. If she had other options, she wouldn't have chosen Sarah, and it was very, very clear through the context of the text that that's exactly how she felt. Also, there's a lot of incestuous things that happen in this book. Don't really know what that was about. A lot of kind of references to incestuous behavior between siblings and in-laws, and y'all know that's where I draw a hard line. Just, it was not the book for me, but glad to have read it and to, you know, have been able to have the discussion. So the next one that I have on here is one that everyone should be familiar with. I'm not gonna really talk about this one a whole lot because I do have a video where I go into detail about why this book did not work for me, and that was Black Queen. This is a YA thriller that is supposed to look at race relations in the Deep South, and it is about a black homecoming queen who ends up getting murdered. It's told in dual perspectives. One of the main characters, Black Duchess, and don't ask me to remember the other girl's name because I cannot remember, but she is a white character. At this point, I was so aggravated by the entire narrative because we should have just put a white girl on the cover of this book because it had nothing to do with the black girls whatsoever. This was a story that centered a white character and her experience understanding systemic racism and coming full circle about how she needs to read more books and learn more about what it's like for black people in this country. I was so pissed off by this book because I feel like it's misleading, and it is a book that showcases what should have been a primary focus on two black characters. At least the cover is showcasing that, and it's not that at all. I don't like when we are led to believe one thing as readers and then we get into the narrative and it's something else, where I'm thinking that this is a book about black people and it is centering the white experience and social justice as it applies to the white community and learning more and educating themselves. Not saying that that won't be important for somebody to read, but that specifically just was not for me, and I had a lot of issues with that one. And I'm surprised that I gave it 2 stars because that's me being generous, and I really could have gone with 1 star on that one. And the last one is another one that I also have a full-length kind of review on, and that is Mike Pence's Memoir, So Help Me God. This book is over 500 pages. I read the entire thing front to cover. A lot of people ask me, like, why in the world did you do that? So I do this as a way to educate myself on what is going on politically with those that don't share the same political values as I do. I don't do it as a way to torture myself. It is a way to see from different perspectives. I've been reading political nonfiction like this for a few years now. This is not new. For anybody who's new here, it is not hate reading. I promise you it's not hate reading. It's to get a better understanding of someone's thoughts and values from their own perspective as opposed to what I consistently hear from the media. This is in their own words. I read Tim Scott's book. I've read Kellyanne Conway's book. This is because it's the opportunity for them to present themselves through their own lens with their own words without the in-between of the media making assumptions or creating a narrative that may not necessarily be true, because it's media, and that's left, right, center, however you feel. Media is media at the end of the day. So that's why I do read these things. Do I enjoy everything that I read? No. Do I typically attempt to find some points that I do agree with? Yeah. There were some aspects in Kellyanne Conway's book. Do we fundamentally disagree politically? Yes, we do. But there were some things that she had complained about in terms of the media and invasion of her privacy when it came to her daughter that I agreed with. There were some things that Tim Scott was saying about his experience that I really resonated with, even though I don't fundamentally agree with him on a political basis. But with Mike Pence, there was nothing really like I fundamentally agree with. I think that learning more about him growing up was interesting information, but I feel as though outside of that, he completely lost me. When he went on the woke train, I was like, yeah, we're done. This is not for me. I'm not for you. And it just kind of went downhill from there. I did find the relationship that he had with Trump to be very, very fascinating. There was a bit of a bromance there, and I think Pence's heart was really, really broken with some of the decisions that Trump was making, and he felt like he was really, really loyal. And I understand that feeling of like being super loyal to someone and then they're a complete like jerk to you, and Pence was heartbroken. But that book did not need to be 500 pages. I don't know why, I don't know who picked it up and published it, but whoever edited that, they could have cut some of that out. There was a lot of information that I think could have been cut out, because it not only am I reading a memoir here where like I don't agree with you politically, but it was dry. that's a huge part of it. It was very, very dry, at least with Tim Scott. Like, even though I wasn't like a huge fan of his either, I left it unrated. But honestly, if I'm being like complete transparent, I probably would have given Tim Scott's, if I was rating it, I probably would have gave it 3 stars. But Pence's, it just, the narrative itself, the writing was just, it was not good writing. So even on the basic skill set of not even content of me agreeing with you or disagreeing with you, but sir, like, your writing, even the writing there was, even if you had a ghostwriter, like whoever wrote it, just, it's not good. So yes, but I do talk about that in one of my weekly wrap-ups as well. So I'd be sure to link that in the card symbol above. I'm pretty sure my battery is about to die. So I'm gonna charge it and then I'll come back and then we'll do the best. And we're back. I'm sorry if this is a different angle, I apologize. I had to adjust my camera so I could get the battery in. So if I'm looking different, sorry. Anyway, okay. So now that we've covered all of the worst books, let's talk about the best reads that I had. The first one on this list is one that you all are familiar with because I talk about this book all the time, and that's We Deserve Monuments. Love this book. It came to me at the perfect time. It came to me in January, and I had a lot going on in January, and it was perfect. It follows a main character who is going with her mother back to her mother's old town to help take care of her ailing grandmother. And there's so many different elements of this, y'all. There's so many beautiful parts of this book that have just really touched my soul. I really want to get a physical copy of this one. I'm on a book buying ban, but I have a gift card, and I think I'm gonna go ahead and get a copy of this for myself so that I can read it physically and annotate it, because I adore this book. The conversations about relationships, intergenerational relationships, and how sometimes family members don't always work the way that they're supposed to work with each other. And sometimes it has lasting impact in ways that we don't expect. And sometimes it takes tragedy for us to figure it out and to pull the pieces of the puzzle together. And Jazz Hammonds did such a beautiful job with the writing, the character development, the pacing of the story. It was just exceptional and beautiful, and did not necessarily end on a perfect note, but it was about healing. And I needed that this year, and so this book just came to me at the perfect time. The next one that I have on this list is one that I read last month, and I haven't talked about it yet, and that is Ruby Lost and Found by Christina Lee. This is a middle grade novel that I had on my radar, and I made the decision to pick it up. I didn't really know much about it going into it, but it follows a young girl by the name of Ruby who has gotten into some trouble at school. And I won't say what she's gotten in trouble for, because I think that part of it is kind of spoilery, because it all unfolds later on. And so she gets in trouble. Her parents don't have a clear understanding of what exactly has been going on with her, and so they sent her to live with her nanai because her grandfather has passed. And part of the issue, there's more to why she's gotten in trouble at school, but part of the issue is that she's having trouble coping with the loss of her grandfather. And so she's sent to live with her grandmother. And while she's there, she finds that her grandmother has somewhat of a secret, and it's having its way of manifesting itself without her really saying so, but Ruby's able to pick up on certain things because of the fact that she's there all the time. And I know exactly what it's like to be in Ruby's shoes in this book and what her grandmother is experiencing. It was a very emotional read for me. It brought me to tears at one point. I listened to it on audio, but it brought me to tears at one point because I was just blown away by how much Ruby wanted to take on and help her grandmother, and how much she had to fight her parents tooth and nail because they didn't realize everything that she had been going through. She was not coping well with the death of her grandfather. They did everything together. They did scavenger hunts in Chinatown around San Francisco together, and you know, that was just her safe place, or her safe space, and she lost that. And so throughout the summer, she's, you know, having to go to, I guess it's like this community center with her grandmother. She's meeting other people. She's learning about other people's experiences. And she's finding that it's possible for her to not necessarily move on, but to heal from the loss of not just her grandfather, but some other things as well. She's dealing with some conflicts with her sister. You know, her parents are not really the best. And she feels like she's dealing with a lot of those issues alone. And so there's some sibling conflict in there. And this one also ends on a very bittersweet note. It's not perfect, but it's very realistic. And I think I'm starting to grow and appreciate more of these children and middle grade books that are ending not in like this perfect happily ever after situation, but ones that are grounded in realism, because a lot of these kids are going through the things that these authors are writing about in books. And so, you know, you want to create situations where there's hope, but there's realism about it as well. And you're not constantly living into this fairy tale perfect ending that a lot of us don't necessarily get all the time. The next one that I have on my list is not, I'm not going to talk about it in depth because there is a live show. Once again, a lot of these are ones that I have definitely talked about quite a bit. And it is The Fire Next Time. So I was asked by Erica to partner up with her and Josh to read through James Baldwin's bibliography, and we're slowly doing that. We had to postpone the live show for last month. I believe that we're supposed to do it at some point this month. I should probably ask about that. And for the first 2 sessions that we did, we read part of The Fire Next Time, and we ended up finishing it. I literally could not choose what James Baldwin selection to put on this list. I should have just put James Baldwin instead of The Fire Next Time. The Fire Next Time was the first one that I saw, but I literally have given everything that I've read by him so far in between 4 to 5 stars. He's exceptional. He's brilliant. He's marvelous. His commentary is just out of this world. I have been so enthralled with his commentary on religion, and he's very much so like me. Like, I feel very seen by his words, the epitome of being spiritual and believing in whatever you believe in. Specifically, we share the same belief in God, but having a lot of trouble with the institution of religion and how mankind has really manipulated and distorted religion as we, you know, go through history. So a lot of that is covered in The Fire Next Time. I learned, I did not know that he had met the great Elijah Muhammad. I mean, I'd said this before when I spoke about this book. I mean, it makes sense when it's all said and done. It makes perfect sense because of the time period. But I love the discussions that he had about the Nation of Islam and comparing it to Christianity, and how fundamentally it's not as different as people, you know, systemically it's not as different as people would like to make it seem to be. I also loved the letter that he wrote to his nephew about love, you know, being a black person in America and needing to receive that love. You know, his father being a black man, a beautiful black man, and not knowing that he's a beautiful black man, and understanding how to move through America having brown black skin. It's just not easy. But it was a love letter to his nephew that just, I'm so glad that we were privy to that, because the words that he gave to his nephew were just phenomenal. And I mean, like I said, I'm saying The Fire Next Time, but there's just so much there's just so much that literally can be said about Baldwin as a whole, but that was just kind of the one that I gravitated towards when I was looking at the list of what I've read. The next is The Empress of Salt and Fortune, which I read this for the Trans Rights Readathon, So I talk about that. I talk about this book and that vlog specifically. And y'all, oh my gosh. First of all, I still need to finish the series, which this might be something that I do in July now that this book is back on my radar again. I didn't know what to expect. I had heard so many people, especially those who are part of the SFF side of the booktube community. I'd heard them talking about the series for a while. Like, people just raving about it, saying how great it was. And I'm thinking, like, okay, you know, it's a cleric going around, you know, capturing stories. And I was like, I don't know. Like, I don't know if this would be something that I'm, like, mind blown with. Like, it doesn't seem like it's something that I would necessarily enjoy. I had an interest in it, but I was like, I don't know. It took me forever to read it. And I read it, and I was mind blown. The writing, the world building, and it's so short. It takes so much skill to do the level of work that Nevo did with this book, y'all, in terms of the writing and the world building and the character development and the commentary on oral storytelling is big in this. And I love when any author, writer, or creator acknowledges the importance of oral storytelling. That's definitely an emphasis in this one. There is some great commentary about gender roles and classism and wealth, and it's so good. And you get all of this in this thin book. That is a gift that many people do not have. That is a gift. I'm telling you, that is a gift that not a lot of people have, and there's no way that I could have done this. This is definitely going to be one of my top reads for the entire year. I don't see it really being shifted by much, unless there's, you know, one in the series, because I know the 4th one comes out in September. But I had to add it. There's no way that I could have done this without adding it. And the last one that I have is a picture book, because I wanted to include some variety here. We have young adult, there's middle grade, there's literary classics here, there's SFF. So I had to include a picture book, and I decided to include That Flag. Whew! Let me tell y'all something. Picture books are killing the game, and I know everybody doesn't read picture books, but if you don't read picture books, you are missing the hell out on so much. You're missing out so much by not reading picture books. That Flag is phenomenal. Not only just because of the artwork, because the artwork is just, oh my gosh, the artwork is just, it's to die for. But I didn't know what to expect when I picked up That Flag. I didn't read a synopsis behind it or anything. It focuses on 2 little girls, close friends. And they're close friends at school, but they're not allowed to be close friends at home. Her parents, it's a black girl and a white girl. Black girl, her parents are like, no ma'am, not at home. And you figure out, you know, it's 32 pages, so very quickly you learn that it's because at the white girl's home, there is a Confederate flag in their yard. And so the little black girl doesn't understand what that flag stands for. And she has this conversation with her family and her father. They go to this museum, and she learns exactly what that flag means. And so there's this conversation that happens between her and her friend. It's like, my parents are not like that. Why, if that's what it stands for, why would they have something like that in their yard? And so it's a great tool to use as a conversation piece amongst families about the dangers and the real meaning behind the Confederate flag. I grew up primarily in the South. When I went to high school, kids were allowed to wear shirts with Confederate flags that said, "Pick my cotton." And that makes me so angry. Like, I don't know why, like, I emotionally just now, I got so angry. Because I have no idea why something like that would have been allowed. And I think back to how, as a child, as a teenager, because this was high school, so I'm thinking back to high school, how I was so accustomed to seeing stuff like that, it just wasn't abnormal. It wasn't something that I actively thought about making me uncomfortable. It was okay. It was deemed to be appropriate. And a lot of people, especially where I'm from, are very much so, it's Southern pride. It's not Southern pride. I will argue that to the day that I die. People like to use that as an excuse out of Southern pride, but that flag stands for a lot of hatred. And it's offensive to a lot of people, including myself. And the history behind it is just awful. And I always think about how much of this stuff I'm going to have to communicate with my own child still living in the South, where we see the Confederate flag all of the time in people's yards, on people's cars, on t-shirts. It is still a huge thing. People have no shame in flying the Confederate flag. I mean, I live not too far from an area where they still have Klan rallies, so I guess there's much to be said about that. When there's still parts of my town that I don't go to after dark, sunset towns are still they're still very, very real in 2023. And it's not a spoken thing. It's just something that we know. You're not to be caught in this area of town after dark. It sucks. But I think that reading that flag was like, it brought everything full circle for me as an adult. And I am anticipating using that as a teaching piece or a conversation piece for me and my daughter when she gets older. But you must check it out. The artwork is, it's so good. It's so, so good. All right, y'all. I think I've done enough talking, enough rambling. If you would like, let me know in the comments down below, like, what were your best and worst books so far for this year? And, you know, how's your reading progress going? Like, how are you feeling about your reading so far? Are you where you want to be? What are you looking forward to reading? Let me know all that in the comments box below. And I will be back with another video soon.